Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last of our 2020 fall workshops, Organizers Organize Organizations. My name is Dave Ursa. I am the project manager for the Growing Democracy Project. Just to tell you a little bit about the project, we look to increase civic engagement by bringing together often disconnected groups, community members, civic leaders, grassroots organizations, and academia. The project was started in 2019 by Dr. Ashley Nichols and Dr. Casey Boyd-Swan. And on a personal note, I'm going to be leaving at the end of this month, and I just want to thank them so much for the opportunity they gave me. I can't even explain how much they've done, and I really appreciate it. You can check out our website. It's growingdemocracyoh.org. You can like us on Facebook, check us out on Twitter. I highly recommend listening to our podcast. Today's guest facilitator was one of the early episodes on our podcast. It's still one of our most popular, and it's still one of the best episodes in my opinion.
Thank you.
Today's workshop will look to explore the tensions, opportunities, and challenges of being activists within organizations. Phyllis Seven-Harris has 25 plus years of experience with nonprofits, including program management, fundraising, and upper level management positions. For many years, she has played a strong role as an advocate in Cleveland's LGBTQ+ community. Under the direction of Ms. Harris, since 2012, the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland has experienced unprecedented growth and expansion. In June 2019, Ms. Harris and her team moved into a newly constructed facility that offers more space, accessibility, and versatility to serve the LGBTQ community. And we're really excited to have her here today. And before I pass it over, just a couple things to mention. We're recording this workshop and it'll be available on our website and on our YouTube page. And if any of you have any questions or comments that you'd like to put forth that you don't feel comfortable with them being recorded, you can do that through the chat. And we ask at the end of the workshop that you please fill out the evaluation provided because it helps us out a lot and we appreciate and value your feedback. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Seven.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and it's really good to be back. When you read the bio, we all have to create these bios, and when you read my bio and it says things like the word unprecedented, I'm thinking we didn't know unprecedented until this global pandemic and the uncertainty that has come with it. So I might need to rewrite that for 2021. To take some of that. I was like so dramatic, and there's so many more important things, but I'm happy to be here. I really appreciated the opportunity when I was on the podcast earlier, and I didn't realize how in hindsight, absolutely how sort of cathartic that was to be able to just tell my story given what's happening in society, right? So the racial unrest, looking at structural racism and anti-Black oppression, the global pandemic and COVID and what has been uncovered around the impact of structural racism, and the pivot that many organizations, especially those of us who are in the social justice movement, social change movement, are doing, because we're finally self-reflecting and self-assessing in a way that we're looking at racism, and we're looking at white privilege, and we're looking at who holds power even in these organizations with these missions that we all love and can benefit from, because people are willing to do the work as organizers, working on the streets and on social media and in nonprofit organizations. And so being able to have had that conversation and really just tell my story and get my voice out as a Black lesbian, as a Black lesbian feminist, as a Black lesbian feminist mom, as a Black lesbian feminist mom, nonprofit practitioner and activist, right? And that's what you're here for. You're here to just hang out with someone like you, right? Someone who, wants to do this work in terms of, social change. And we all have different ways of approaching it, and we all have gifts to bring to it. And so your question, is about, or the conversation that we're going to have is going to be about, organizing within an organization, organizers organizing organizations. And so I wanted to be able to just tell my story around maybe around the center, and sort of tie it into what's happening today. I might need some help with, making sure I'm not being too long-winded, and then also please ask questions in the chat, and if there's something specific. I did get to read questions that were or comments that were submitted ahead of time, and so blame it on not my heart if I don't get to all of what you all brought up. And you can always reach me to say more, to hear more, to talk, to connect. My email is pharris@lgbtcleveland.org, and so if Ashley will drop that into the chat, if you want to get to me, you can. I'm pretty accessible. It takes me a while sometimes, but know that I want to talk to you, because again, I want to build coalition with activists and people who are interested in this topic, and we need to talk to each other and be in each other's presence. So appreciate that. So I work at an organization that has been around since 1976, and that means we have quite a history. We hold marginalized identities, and so have needed federal and statewide protections around our rights and respect, and are always fighting for it. Was a really small, more grassroots shop with folks, really brave individuals, doing the work and supporting the community. Started off with, just literature that would help, and then moving to a physical, location, or at least an address, once in a house, and then in dilapidated sort of like buildings, but like to a hotline, 24-hour hotline, to being able to offer more broader services in newer and more updated locations. The first time when we moved into Gordon Square Arts District, before all of the development here in Cleveland, to where we are now, where we occupy this 15,000 square foot, 2-story, it has a terrace, beautiful facility that is your center if you want to claim it. And so along with that, there is this, activism that needs to happen. The advocacy is in our mission. But one of the things that I noticed when I got to the center in 2012 is, while yes, there was an opportunity to bring my skills as a nonprofit practitioner, like about how nonprofits operate, and sort of like drop them into what was happening there at the center. And that was, that took a lot of time and energy, and really getting buy-in from board and community members that is what was needed to build the infrastructure to be able to then deliver on the mission, right? And so I have a hard time, just like we talk about intersectionality, right? So I'm an activist, but I'm also a nonprofit practitioner. So I'm seeing it differently than maybe someone who really thinks the way to go is to the protest on the street. I don't have any issues with that. I want you to keep safe while you're out there protesting. But that is a different tactic, right? So I'm in this organization as a nonprofit practitioner, looking through the lens in that way, as a Black person, as a woman, and I'm getting the infrastructure together because I have these skills, and I said, we need development, we need communications, we need to know our finances, we need to, build, do board development, because I can't lead this by myself, those types of things. We need to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion within the LGBT community and organizations that we serve in. We need to look at stratification of like, where are the Black people and the brown people in terms of the power and the initiative. So all of that needs to happen. But the nonprofit, redirect is what I call it, is what I really focused on. And I would say about 4 years into it, especially after we, got the privilege to be able to produce our Pride events, and other things that were happening in the greater community. And then the way that we were building our organizational culture around being activists who happen to work in a nonprofit. It's not a big old gay sandbox anymore. We have other skills too. But we're activists within the constraints of, a nonprofit that is, if you look at the history of nonprofits and you start with looking at charity organizations and the growth, what the intent was, taking money, asking people for money to deliver these services, right? So we're within the constraints of that. And so there are certain ways in which I think that as an organization, we were functioning as a nonprofit, but not doing that advocacy, that activism work, that organizing work, right? That how do you get people together around a cause or an issue and build coalition and get those issues analyzed and presented to the right people who can make change, who we can hold accountable to that change, right? So how do you do that? And you don't have money, as so it's not a public policy initiative within your organization, but this is real people, doing real work. Really hard to do that until we got Pride, right? Until we got the idea to do Pride. And so there came with an idea and really more of an expectation from many community members who felt left out in some ways, to organize in a way that was going to be inclusive, that we are going to yes, celebrate the progress that we've made. We're going to celebrate our identities, our sexual orientation, our varied gender identities, our queer identities, but we are going to do it differently because we deliver these services, but we're activists, and advocacy is in our mission, and we are a social change organization. So the staff who had the freedom to bring all that they could around who they are in terms of their authentic selves and what they care about into the workplace. How are the isms that are and the things that are happening in greater society impacting the work that you do on a daily basis in service delivery to the LGBTQ plus community? It's always a question that we were asking. And so the organization began to pivot in its feelings about other issues coming up and how they intersected with the focus of LGBTQ folks. And so we have a march. We don't have a parade. And we make it very clear that this is, yes, about taking it to the streets. And I, even every year, I feel a little bit of tension and a little bit of, and I think it's interesting in that when we're in the march, there are moments when it's kind of quiet and you hear our feet, you feel our energy, but you don't hear, there might be somebody who has a bullhorn, but you don't see the bells and whistles. You don't see my beautiful colleague Divinity in a car, with feathers and rainbows floating around her. You don't see that, but what you see is people taking it to the street in a peaceful, what we would like to call a protest, but we call it a march. And I think it began not just because of the staff internally, but yes, the freedom to bring their authentic selves and the things that they care about, but also the greater community. I remember going to a meeting right before when we knew that we were going to be able to produce the Pride event, and representatives from Stonewall Dims and other organizations, Plexus, were all around, and there was a conversation, a parade, right? Protest, and then riot, right? So what do we want? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. Parade, march, protest, riot, right? So all on the table. So people are thinking about, how do we lift up the voices and issues of trans identities and queer identities in a way? And so we landed on a march because riot got taken off right away, right? Nobody wants to have to riot. Sometimes there might be a good reason to, but that's not where we were. So the parade, march. Protest felt too strong for some folks. We weren't really there. We at that point, at that time, we didn't feel like it was about a protest. And so we landed on march for the center. And it really felt as a organizer organizing within an organization, it felt like it was something that I could show that, yes, I love parades, but I like watching them on television. But and I understand the impact of them, and especially when it and how even Pride became a parade. But really, that saying that people have picked up again in this time of protest and lifting up voices and questioning and the divisiveness that's happening in our country. Really, being able to march, to take it to the streets is our form of keeping our organization safe, keeping people safe, and showing that we have changed as an organization. It's not by chance necessarily. There is something happening underneath all of this, and so our organization, as we did that, got a little bit more bolder, right? We got more bold. I might have mentioned this before. It's part of my my musings. You can't ask me to stand up for LGBTQ rights. Me, Phyllis Seven Harris, a Black woman, a Black lesbian feminist, and not think that I'm going to stand up for the Black Lives Matter movement. Sorry, not going to happen. Sorry, not sorry. So how do we do that within the context of an organization? And really, I felt the shift, from that Pride moment, in 2015 when we got started. So it's been 5 years to what's happening now with the organization in terms of its visibility and what you'll see coming next. So Pride was just one way. That internal work is still happening. When the George Floyd murder happened, and I didn't hear from individuals in white-led LGBTQ organizations, I was so sad. I felt like if I was, where are you? And they quickly got it together, and are doing some work at looking at anti-Black racism within the LGBTQ community. But that was another indication that we are afraid, right? So in terms of continuing to organize, I think that sometimes we don't think about organizing within organizations as what's happening in result of the LGBT community members or led organizations and group in Northeast Ohio coming together to look at racism, moving from there to really knowing that we have some good visibility and some good credibility now, not being as worried that we're going to lose donors because we post a BLM, message on our personal pages, not even the center pages. We're not even there yet, but our personal pages. To now working with a coalition within our organizational frameworks of both LGBT focused organizations and housing organizations for folks who are homeless or who are housing insecure. So NEOC, Northeast Ohio Coalition on Organization on Home, NEOC. I'll have to send you the link to what they do to lift up the fact that we need more support around trans individuals. So Leah Day was, died within our county jail system. And so what is going on? And so we have a whole coalition of individuals who are, thank you for that, NEOC, a whole coalition of individuals coming together. There will be a press release that's happening. We are organizing. Our development director at the center is a woman who is trans and who is a writer and activist. Her name is Ellie Turan. Google her, Eliana, or Ellie, Ellie, last name Turan. Writing some really poignant articles where we're lifting up some of the challenges that that trans identified folks face around the murders that have happened, you know, in the last several years here in Northeast Ohio. And if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention is what we're saying. And so we're definitely keep following us around that because there is a coalition that is being created to send out a press release. It probably will happen within the next couple of years at the top of the year. And we're doing that within the confines of our organization. I can't tell you, you know, that I didn't have to, was a time when, you know, we put out a press release about something, some injustice, and, you know, it would just go and I'd sign off on it. I do feel as I continue to be in this place and have this type of visibility in this work, that the politics become real. So don't think that, you know, that all of us can stay out of the politics, especially if you're in a role like mine. But find some partners in places that you bounce your ideas off. You know, talk to the organizers about what the demands are and what they need. And then, you know, I like having my ear to the ground and being engaged there, where I don't talk, where I just listen, and where I don't lead, where I follow. And then having them trust me that I say, here's the deal. Here's where I sit around here. What can we do? What can we do? It's relationship building. It is both and figuring out the right partners to not water down the issues, to get them moving. You know, hold us accountable. Hold us accountable because we serve all the people, right? As leaders. But figure out who to partner with. So this last press release that's going out, where we're calling out our city, we're calling out our county executive. We have some demands around better treatment for trans and gender varied individuals. I did go to my board chair, who I had to make some decisions about, because the changes that we are making as an organization around our pivot to being more about social justice and out about it, because he's, and I don't know if I would have done it differently, but he's also a Black man. So for the first time in the center's, you know, 45 plus history, it is a Black-led organization from my perspective, and saying that has some power. And I know you all get it, and defining what that means. What is a Black and brown led organization is another question that, you know, the philanthropic community is having right now as they're looking to support. But anyway, I wanted to give him the opportunity to take a look, to say, this is what we're going in as, this is how we're going in, and to get his feedback and get that back to the other organizations, you know, who are activists. And we're going to work something out. And it's going to be a strong letter, you know, press release, but it is working within the not just the confines of the organization in terms of the sector, but that, and also having built good relationships with people from other perspectives. I'm going to stop talking there because I have to drink some water, but I want to hear your feedback and see if you have any questions for now, and if this is making sense.
I love this. Casey, did you have something?
Yeah, I had a question. So I guess it would occur to me that there are certain limitations that working within an organizational confine would have on your ability to engage in activism. Mm-hmm. But are there also some benefits from it that you don't get from working out if you were engaged in activism outside of this organizational context?
Well, that's a great question, because I'm certain that there are, right? I think for me, the benefit has been there's a certain level of credibility. It's not so much millennials will like check you in a minute, you know, but there's a certain level of credibility. I certainly, and Gen Zers too, that I get because I'm in this role around being able to. I think the first time I think that I felt like I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Is I keep talking about pride for some reason, but it was when there was announcement that Pride would be canceled by the other organization that delivered it successfully for many years. And I knew that was a big thing, like, I'm like, crap, what's gonna, and so I say to them, hey, I hear you, but we're gonna have to bring this to what we call the queer student council, right? So leadership in every LGBT group or an organization, in Northeast Ohio, we want you to hear this. And because, I'm solutions focused, I knew we would come up with something. I didn't know what it was gonna be, but I made the phone calls. Actually, it was an email. I sent these emails, I listed all of them, and I could, this was on a Tuesday, and the meeting, we had a short window. The meeting needed to take place on a Thursday. Everyone showed up. And I was like, I can do that. If I call, they'll come, so it's kind of like, supporting me in building my own confidence as a leader. And so I think one of the benefits working within an organization is that, the center, sees a problem and the center needs our help. And so I do think that can help, or that did help in that situation. And probably if I thought about it more, it can help. I have an example. We had, there are lots of protests that are happening. And there was a particular group that wanted to have a protest. And then there was, a lot of controversy, like offline on Signal about, the group. And if they, could keep people safe, to be honest. And as an organization, I was able to take some time and reflect and lean on the fact that I couldn't put our organization in that kind of risk. I want to be supportive. I'm supportive of the rights on trans liberation and equity around what's happening to queer identities. But I think a benefit, which might not be seen as such from said group, is that I could lean on, and there is a lot to lose. I can be out about that it's a challenge, but I want to work with you and I want to partner. I want to get you the right partner.
So I have a question, but it might pivot. So if other people want to jump in on this kind of line of questioning, feel free to do that. But my question is, and in many ways, this comes out of my role as an educator. So I'm in university and I'm working with students, and these students tend to want jobs, and they want to create social change, and they want to be rabble rousers, and they want to do this, but they also want to, but most of the jobs are and especially in that space, public and nonprofit sector, right? Yeah. And so that tension is real. What, as an executive director, what would you look for in a resume or cover letter that would indicate that this person is a good fit to be an organizer within an organization? That's a long question, but I hope.
Yeah, I'm excited to see their resume. That's all I can think of, because, like I like to partner with individuals who come to work for the center in terms of the organizational culture that we really work hard to establish and maintain. And so, in that resume, I would be okay with hearing about in the resume, attended the 2010 March on Washington, whatever it was, especially if you are applying for an organization like, the LGBT Community Center, our mission is very short because I'm a smart practitioner. I needed to be able to remember support, advocacy, education, and celebration, right? So we exist to provide supportive services for LGBTQ individuals, education, advocacy, and celebration. So that celebration, see, I slide in Pride right under there, and other opportunities for us to lift up who we are in terms of the ways in which we celebrate ourselves culturally. And so, you can give information in a way on the resume about the work that you've done, even if you haven't, like mine will say Rape Crisis Center, AIDS Task Force, Planned Parenthood, preterm. Oh yeah, that I'm somebody, who is about social change. Even if you don't have that, if there are things that you, might have on there around places that you've shown up around movement work. I don't think that it would, for me, be a bad thing to have, how you list out your skills, movement work, use the language. You can say organizing, community organizing. You can say that falls under it. But if you say movement work, those of us in the movement are going to get it. We're going to get curious about what type of movement work did you do around what issues. I think that was your question. How do you indicate and do organizing within an organization? You get a good leader. You get a good organizational leader who wants to listen to new ideas and be innovative and have their finger on the pulse of what's happening all around. There's no excuse for nonprofits to be tone deaf about the broader issues that are taking place. And if you're finding that you are applying for places that kind of leave that all out, that might not be the environment that you want to be in. They can exist. They have a right to exist. People have a right to choose work where they're not dealing with that. But if you're an activist, you're likely, it's all over you in it. It's a lifestyle job, right? There is no separating it. And so I think finding the right organization and doing what I call screening, right? Like, so when I'm trying to get a job, I definitely want to put my best foot forward and all of that. But really, if you're a good activist, they're going to be glad to have you. You don't walk in there with a big ego, but like, look at the organization too. What is their diversity, equity, inclusion statement look like? Do they have one? Those types of things. I don't know if I answered your question. How do you organize within? How do you present yourself on your resume as someone who wants to do organizing work?
Yeah, definitely the organizing, but also the strategic, the strategy and looking for the organization and the fit.
Yeah. Yep.
Craig, did you also have a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question just that popped into my head when you were speaking. Much of the work that you discussed, especially the relationship building piece, some of the subtle and tangible, but also powerful practices of organizing, defy conventional reporting structures often that are used to legitimate work. And so as someone who works at a university who borrows a lot from organizing and those intangible skills in my approach to my work with colleagues and students, I was wondering how you assess or capture or report impact and also effectiveness in our culture that I would say clearly prefers quantitative, reductive methods that favor dominant groups a lot of times.
You have to allow your stories to be told in multiple ways and loudly. So it tones it squashes the they're gonna get that, right? They're gonna get some quantitative data around how many people, how many impressions, how many marches, how many whatever around impact. But I feel like the way that I got around it in some ways is really allowing the people who benefit from your actions, the way that you think, speak loudly, some kind of way. I can't tell you that I understand academia at all. Like in terms of the politics that exists. I'm hoping to learn soon. I'm leaning in a little bit here, in a way. So knowing you're the best expert around, again, your culture, your organizational culture. I don't know why, but what I felt like in terms of a response is like, who is telling the story about the actual work? And yes, there's the story in the numbers, but sometimes if you can get the impact shown in those other ways through people's stories, testimonial, willingness to participate and join in and share the stories, The other stuff, it doesn't go away. It doesn't become obsolete, but it doesn't become the focus of how what the impact is. You amplify the other in some kind of way. And I'm not saying that it's easy.
Thank you.
So I have two people that reached out to me that said they have questions. So first Jerry and then Casey.
Thank you, Ashley. It's good to connect with you, Phyllis, finally here. Had a quick question, and you just touched on it a little bit, but I've been an organizer for like 20 years. And for me, the number one tool in organizing has been story and how it impacts communities. And so how much of the story piece do you really emphasize around your work at the center and throughout your organizing career?
Yeah, it's been a slow build. We call it within the context of our nonprofit, marketing and communications, right? And a lot of times, you don't have, our foundation funding goes toward programs, right? And not general operating and not admin support. And so the way that I initially did it was like, I'll use the gay games as an example. It was coming to Cleveland and the center was not involved. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, I'm gay, I like games, but a little bit more than that, but like, why weren't we involved? And so I went to a foundation and I said, we want to be the gay games know-it-alls, right? So I want to hire this part-time position to do communications around the gay games, to disseminate information. And what that's going to do is allow more people to be included who might not otherwise hear about it or get information about it. And so I didn't have any money for communications and marketing. I didn't have any money to do the storytelling about the impact that we have on individuals who would come to the center, the seniors who never miss, for years. I've been there for 9 years. At this point, it was like 4 years, understanding that I have a group of seniors that come every Monday, Wednesday, Friday without fail. That is their life support and things like that. And so really figuring out how to tell those stories and, use our phones to take little testimonials and post them on our social media. We had a goal by 2014 to have 2014 followers on like Facebook by the 2014 gay games. So we set internal goals that might not make sense externally around reaching people. Till now, where I have a marketing communications manager. And so I fought so hard with my board again, even last year, to bring that people. She's only been in for a year, to bring her in at the end of last year. So I think that storytelling, you have to get really good at it. And I think even right now with COVID and how we're using these devices and how if you pay attention to, I always watch Instagram and, and folks, they use those colorful, kind of like soundbite, I call them, messages. It is really hard. And, it's always easier if you have someone whose focus is that, but there might be, ways to build and have a plan around it. So right now, we used to have an e-newsletter that went out randomly. And then I got somebody an intern who would say, it has to go out every month at a certain time, and we were doing it twice a month. Now we're back to once a month, and now it's a magazine so there is some evolution to it within organizations. I know you've been at it 20 years. I think that within, if you think back, you'll see how, maybe communications and outreach and telling the stories, waxed and waned. We're better in some places than others. Take the good stuff, leave the rest. The bottom line, while there's all these bells and whistles and tools we can use, again, it's going to go back to relationships and knowing how to listen to people and get information. It's a grind, but worth it. You know that.
So it's so funny that you left it there, because you've talked a lot about, in response to Craig and Jerry and in just telling your story, about, relationship building and bridge building. And I'm curious though, because when you're in an organization, nonprofits have gotten a bad rap for that. Well, it's just the man in disguise, right? Where this is,
Yeah.
just another hierarchical organization
Yeah.
that's, right, doing the work.
Yeah.
There's gotta be, in many instances, I would think, just a lack of trust there. So how do you engage in relationship building and bridge building when you are in a community where there are activists that just don't trust you?
Yeah. I have people who say, I don't F with the center. I used to hear that. Activists, my activist friends. Okay. I think there's some truth to the constraints that we have, and I talked about, like, the Phyllis Seven Harris ED today is a lot different than the Phyllis Seven Harris ED 5 years ago in terms of the politics that exists all around it. So I think, there are ways for activist groups to say, I'm not doing that. I don't mess with, nonprofits. They are the man. There are ways to still have relationships with them, because there are things that, like, I think that the center can offer that will allow for them to use space, will allow me to add credibility. So I always say, don't sleep on me. Like, even though I'm within these confines, it's better to have a relationship where there's, mutual respect. At least we're cordial with each other, because we dare not leave anyone behind, right? I think the other way which I've been able to do this is I've really wholeheartedly taken on the identity of being a transformational leader, like in terms of my leadership style. I can't do it without the energy and smarts and wit of other people. And I still will claim being the smartest person in the room, because I know you, because I partnered with you, because we figured out how to collaborate. So I think that, I always talk about, I'm not going to be surprised. We have a plan, we have contingency. Like, so if we are having our little nice, sweet, protest or march, I'm sorry, for Pride, and there is a group that wants to protest, they get to protest. I do have this sort of like attitude now that I'm 55, like they get 8 minutes. And then after that, we're going to go on with our march, because we have a good reason for being out there in the street, and we deserve to have our event and have it pull off. So come and protest, hold us up. And I have in my mind, I don't know why I didn't say 7 minutes. For some reason, I feel like 8 minutes, it will turn into 15, because, the activists are going to do what they do. And so I'm going, as long as we are safe, as much as control, there's some things that the center will not have control of. These people are in control of their own actions and things like that. We will also, stand with them and saying to our law enforcement professionals to stand down as much as possible. This is also about keeping people safe. I am Black. I'm not trying to get shot in the streets. So I take some of this, I take personally, from my personal lens. I am not just the ED of the center. I'm a human being. I'm a Black woman. I have Black children. A Black mama that I need to stay alive for, to take care of, there's a lot to it. I feel like, again, offering respect to those groups. And there's some, like, if you're gonna wield weapons and, and do, things that put so many people in danger, I'm not trying to holler at you either. So the feeling is mutual, all right, do your thing, I'll do my thing, but let's figure out where we can partner. I really think that there's always somewhere, as long as the values are the same. The tactics may be different, and we'll argue about that. But again, we need all of us. There's not enough of us. Yes.
So I have a question from Dave and then from Gwen, unless it's directly related, Gwen. Okay, all right, Dave, you want to go ahead?
I think my question actually expounds a little on Casey's question, that you know, every organization has to be funded. I'm just curious, you've been
Yeah.
doing this so long, if you've ever had any pushback from a funder on some type of activism within your organization, and how you would deal with that when that happens.
Yeah, that's a great question. Not so far. You know, I started off with when at the Rape Crisis Center, it was a big deal to work with. It was like a summer intern who was looking for a project, and I was excited. There was this real concerted effort to get nonprofits involved in policy work. And so I was really excited because I got an intern who was really interested in it, and we developed a public policy plan for the Rape Crisis Center back there. So we were doing our work, our direct service, but not any legislative work. I became a registered lobbyist for a while. Never, you know, like it was very interesting. And then, so I was working within the confines of the nonprofit, and yes, you know, we're going to have public policy, you know, and I think I'm you know, I'm giving it a high voice because that's my excited fake voice, but I do think that it's important, right? That you have policies, you know, advocacy within the nonprofits. There's some power to that. To get into a place where I was at the center, you know, I worked for all those other organizations that had the same sort of setup. Planned Parenthood a little bit differently because you got to walk through people yelling at you, you know, like, and so they were not as be careful, you know, for, you know, you're organizing around reproductive, you know, rights or justice. That wasn't so much. There was a march, the Women's March, or, you know, like, and things like that people could get in on. Got to the center, and, you know, it is given that we're part of a movement, we have pride, but it really isn't political. You know, many prides across the nation had lost their, in some ways, political roots, right? It was still there, but like kind of like overshadowed by all the fun and things like that. Not that we shouldn't have fun, because I miss it, but to this opportunity where we began to change, and we did worry about losing funders. I got called in once because I posted, you know, I stand with, reposted, I stand with Ferguson, and you know, a board member said we're going to lose donors, and we did. We lost that board member too, you know, but we lost that board member because the other board, the other members, I don't think they, you know, ran to like, that's okay, we're gonna see it too. This was not this time around. This was Ferguson, right? But they didn't challenge. You know, I had to say I am an activist. You know, like you remember who you hired. You know, like you know, like so it didn't happen. I think there might be an expectation in some ways that we are going to make provocative statements. And I think now more than ever, given that, you know, there's Black leadership, but and I don't know that you know, I'm working hard as a nonprofit ED to recruit and attract and build relationships with individuals who are board members who have a different framework for which this work can happen, for which the work can happen within the context of the center. So you're looking at people like Kenyon Farrell. I don't know if you know who he is. He does community organizing. You can Google him, Kenyon, Kenyon. There might be 2 N's in there, and last name Farrell, 2 R's, I know. Farrell. Google him. He's joining our board. Dr. Henry Ng, who does a lot of great work around trans rights. He's a medical doctor, but is an activist on the board. So I am trying to come full circle as a nonprofit ED, in that I focus on, you know, building the staff and the team. And we had this opportunity, we have this building. What's happening at the board leadership level? Who do we have on the board? A lot of times nonprofits are challenged by that. So the ways in which we get jacked up is because we need the money, right? And so in order to attract donors who will give and get the kind of money that we need like high level suited up C-suite and higher board members. And, you know, they have a whole different way of thinking about issues and problems and seeing the world and seeing how nonprofits should function. So I have gone back to the drawing board in some ways, and trying to capstone my experience, you know, as a leader at the center by getting, like I said, you know, when I said no, it's not a big old gay sandbox anymore, like, you know, like not that people didn't have smarts and, you know, and expertise, the structure around it, I started thinking, oh, we need a different kind of board in these times, right? And so it's again, a slow burn because you gotta have people have to roll off and you have to recruit and build relationships with people. For me, if you think about the fact that 80% of nonprofit boards are white men, who's gonna relate to me? Who's gonna be willing to lean in? I have a lot of challenges around that. That's another time you'll have me on. But I think to your question, there's always the consideration of loss, especially for LGBTQ folks in general. So I'll say that once because there are people who will decide that because of our identities, you know, they're too uncomfortable. They might not even really be against it, but they're too uncomfortable, and so they won't come closer. I think that's always true for organizations that will take a stance around people with who are marginalized and pushed to the edges, that there's going to be the potential for loss of funding. And I always hope that we have the capacity to take it.
I'm going to use that quote next time I revise our fund development class.
All right.
Gwen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've been involved in community rights and rights of nature, you know, securing those in law.
Mm.
You know, it's a version of trying to legalize democracy. And the challenge that we've had is that everybody seems to be in their own activist silo. And people say, yeah, oh yeah, let's collaborate. But what they seem to mean is you join my group.
Yeah.
And I'm really impressed with the kinds of reaching out and collaboration along the range of different levels of activism.
Yeah.
And let me just, before I get you to answer how you approach it, I'd like to throw in one more thing, and that is that recently, this past year, I've been trying to research other kinds of activism that don't require asking any permission. And what I mean by that is I've been doing some research on, you know, complementary currencies, time banks, you know, things that are activism that you just go out and you do it and you build it. Now, I haven't done it yet, but I'm
happening.
Gathering. Yeah, no, it's happening. I know it's happening. And I know that Kent State has its own worker-owned business department, and I've talked with those folks. So I'm sort of thinking about how to approach it, and anyway, so now.
Yeah, you know, I don't know that this statement is really captures it wholly, and it might be a little bit offensive, you know, but I don't mean to offend. But we have to make choices, right? And so I always feel like I can learn something from other groups and other approaches. And so the statement is take the good stuff and leave the rest, right? And so what about this group that is different in terms of their approach that would be good, that you can connect with, as long as what is bad, even if it's one thing, if it's too heavily weighted, you know, you're not, you know, you might not be able to accept the good, you know, and leave the bad. I think if you take that approach along with being respect, if you think your approach is the approach and the right way, it's okay to allow space for that other group to think that their approach is the right way, right? And so you're not going to be able to collaborate with everyone. It does take some work to both stand down, right, around some things and know how to negotiate. You need to know how to negotiate when you're an organizer. There are certain things that you don't budge on though, and so that is okay. I feel like what you're getting to, and this just came up in another meeting that I had with where we're looking at the philanthropic community, around the rapid response, COVID rapid response funding in Greater Cleveland, where they're saying, what do nonprofits need? And we have something like 7th concentration of nonprofits in the nation somewhere, like a whole bunch of us. And so all of the funding entities will say things like, there's too much duplication. There's too much overlap. There's too much this. There's too much nonprofits need to collaborate. How many times we need to all work together? Well, what's not happened is that part about teaching people how to collaborate, right? So where is the entity that is taking a look at all of the different groups in terms of their activism and saying, we're going to teach you all how to work together. We're going to teach collaboration. We're going to give you a fellowship, Phyllis, and, collaborate the people, or something like that. So I think there's a gap there. We could all use how to do that. I'm not talking kumbaya. There are people that I don't like, I'm petty. I can get petty. I can, I keep it in check. I've had enough professional experience to collect myself and to be able to be called out. But I'd love some training on how to be collaborative across our organizations. All of us bringing, and this is where that transformational leadership style comes back. All of us bringing our best, getting recognized for what we can contribute. And you see that sometimes in organizations listed, but it's so surface. How really are we working together, and can we do it? So the example that I love, that I watch, that I've benefited from because is Reparations Cleveland. Have you seen any of that? Okay, they're on Instagram. Maybe if you go to Instagram and you go to Reparations Cleveland, something will come up, and they are just doing it. They are collecting money and items and providing support to, I believe, Black and Brown folks. They haven't asked for permission from any organization. They have their own motto. I really like what they're doing. And think it's, and trying to study it, to be honest.
Seven, I had another question. You mentioned negotiation just now, and you used this word before. Besides turning over board members, how do you engage in a negotiation with them when your activist side says, we need to do this, and their board member perspective says, nah, we're not going to do that?
Yeah, those are those tough board meetings where, I have some level of respect for being able to deliver on the major things, right? In terms of what we're there to do as an organization. And really, it's the board's vision that I'm there to implement. So I'm very clear on my role as an executive director. But I also realize I have more of my finger on the pulse of what the community wants and expects from us. And so I will sometimes say things like, well, if that's the direction that you want to take, here's what I think we should do. If this is the direction that you're going to take, we're going to have to manage the messaging around that, right? And when I ask that question, I've already thought about their strategy or what they are going to want me to leave out because they're nervous about my strategy. And I say to them, and we begin to work about, because I'm with them, I am the center. And I'm there, they can hire, fire me, evaluate me, whatever, not give me a contract, or, all that stuff, so I want to say, okay, so this is what you want to do, and I'm on the front lines, right? I get the call, right? So what's the message? Because do you want me to tell them? Or do you want to work out something here? And I buy myself some time and enlighten people, and it's always educating them and hopefully allowing them to face their fear and say, then that's not going to happen. You know, if it happens, it does. You know, and we move on. I haven't been. So, you know, I haven't been faced too much with having to do that. It's really on an individual level about, you know, some board members not really respecting my leadership sometimes when I say I'm an activist, I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm, you know, so that can happen. So I feel like even with the current protests that, you know, that happened since July, the center kind of sort of like got a pass because I'm a Black woman and the board chair is Black. We actually wrote a statement, like all many other organizations, it never went out. Because other statements were happening, I could say. Did I give my organization a pass? Maybe. We'll talk about that at some point if you all stay connected. So listening to me, like, you know, figuring it out as I'm going.
Does anybody else have any other questions? So my text message and chat function no longer have a line, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more questions. Anything else? So as people are brainstorming, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm really excited. And to Gwen's point, Casey, I do think that a workshop specifically on collaboration around intersectional organizing or whatever that might look like, even if it's on kind of similar interests but different approaches, might be a really great workshop on how to navigate that space.
Yeah, just some transparency about communicating and about what you do and how you do it. Well, you know, not everybody's gonna jump in. We're also skeptical, you know, but at least, you know, you have open communication about, you know, what's going on, what you're doing, what your tactics are, so we're not stepping on each other's toes or. Like I really, you know, I keep saying I'm going to have to look up the definition of coalition because I have this idea of what it looks like, and I want to make sure that the definition really meets. And I might need to modify it, but I really don't see us. And I think it has to do with what's happened in the last 4 years under this administration and the backlash from the Obama years. And, you know, like, forget about talking about, you know, Republicans and Democrats and things like that. I don't know that, you know, I have to vote one way. Well, sort of, you know, like I'm not feeling a lot of things, you know, like, but I think that there's so much divisiveness that I can't respond any other way but to say, like, yo, it might be us against something else, and we're closer to wanting the same things around rights and respect and liberation than we are there. So what can we do, bro? Come on, you know, let's get it. And so, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I'll have to look at Rinku's. Yeah, so, you know, I will say that I don't feel like I'm an expert. And this is why I like opportunities where we can have conversations about these topics. Even if I'm yammering on a lot, I'm certain that I could learn from you all, you know, especially as activists. And so I'm open to, you know, all sorts of blind spots. And I always want some time to deal with it. I want to scale up to being better, you know, like as much as possible, even with the sense of urgency around the issues that we all care about. There has to be some planning around it. We're going to have to take some losses. There has to be some sacrifices, and it's okay. It's okay to, you know, draw a line in the sand and say, you know, this is not negotiable, you know, in terms of, you know, what we stand for. So still learning.
Yeah. I mean, and Casey and I, and to some extent with Dave too, and have had these conversations around our own work, right? Like around what we do and how we work in collaboration and amplify the work of others, but also recognize the tensions with funding, right? Like seeking funding and working not to, pull funding away from other good places. And
Right.
it's there's the layers of it are really complicated.
It really is.
We want to recognize that you also have limited time. We're at the 1 hour, 10 minutes, which is just shy of where we had indicated, but we wanted to ask if there's any final statements that you wanted to give, Seven, and then Dave will wrap it up for us.
I like to belong. And if you came on here because you're an activist, like this has been, or for whatever reason, you just like learning, I feel really good to have belonged in this moment with you. Like stay in it, take good care of yourself as you're in it. I love that, some of you have expressed understanding your organizational culture and environment and the constraints that might, the challenges, within them. It's slow and steady wins the race, like it's a lifestyle. I don't think you stop ever being, once claiming the title of activist, you might not be activated out in the street or activated within the organization, but you always are. And so it's a lifestyle identity. Find the place where you can be an activist, even if it's not in your workspace, or even if it's not, so that you can feed yourself and feel good about who you are and be proud about what you're contributing within the context of all this mess we have all around us all the time, right? Don't give up. You're doing all right.
Also, thank you.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. I've found normally when there is a stronger desire for more unity, it tends to align with when there's more problems. Well, you have your specialty at the center with what you look at, but then there's also other areas that you're seeing like we really could use some work here. Are there other areas that you really think that come to mind that collaboration really should be looked at more and be stronger at?
Like in terms of the work that I do, or in general?
Advocacy in general, I think.
And advocacy in general. Well, you know what? We had to look at racism. We have to look at sexism. Like even if you look at, policy work, the Bernie bros, they can be like really tough. Like I want to join with them. I get where they're coming from, but the sexism is rampant. So your question was where are the opportunities for better collaboration with advocacy work in general, right? Or say it again, because
I'm kind of asking, where else do you see problems that you think people should be focusing in terms of advocacy?
Okay, so yeah, I think we need to self-assess, right? What are the methods? Who said that these are the methods? Who got to decide that this is what it is? And so sort of like unpack that, see who's around the room, get the people who are missing, and then redirect. So it's a more general thing that I think, needs to happen in advocacy, lifting up and supporting people around who are most impacted around the issues that you are advocating for. Not just putting them out there and, watching them flail or become a, burnt out from just being use it in a sort of like dog and pony way, but like add the extra needed support so that they can begin to use their own voice and learn how to advocate for themselves and others. So I think that is probably something that always has happened, in some form or another, in this work. But I think it needs to be amplified, and we need to really focus on that at this moment in time in order to make good decisions about how to move forward.
I like it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Seven. That was a great conversation, and thanks everybody for joining, and a
Yeah,
bunch of
thank
great
you.
questions. And we ask again that you take a few minutes and fill out the evaluation at the end. And we also ask you to check out our podcast. Seven has a great episode, and Jerry also, who joined us today, there's a great episode with him too. So please check
Awesome.
out our podcast, and everybody have a great weekend.